Marcus Aurelius is one of the most famous and well-known Stoic philosophers of all time. He was one of the greatest emperors of his time, known for his enormous control of emotions and how clearly he thought. Before I show you how he achieved the mastery of thinking clearly and logically, I need to explain what he went through to reach this great level of wisdom. At the time, he held one of the highest positions of power in the world and would have had access to the fulfillment of all his temptations and desires if he so wished. But instead, he dedicated his life to a virtuous life, directed towards impartiality and justice. During his rule, Aurelius found time to construct a series of autobiographical writings, known today as the Meditations, which have become one of the most important texts in Stoic philosophy. In the Meditations, Aurelius describes guides on how to improve oneself. He wrote these texts for himself so that he could reflect on what he could improve. The main focus was to adopt a cosmic perspective and critically analyze his judgment of himself and others. As the leader of a powerful empire that went through several wars during his rule, Aurelius used his own Stoic philosophy to put aside stress and worries and be the best and most reliable leader he could be. Stoicism is an ancient and incredibly famous philosophy which, as well as a theory, is also a truly inspiring practice of thinking, living, and acting. The Stoics firmly believed that doing the right thing, even in the face of difficulty, was the key to happiness, and that doing the right thing required good judgment and clear rational thinking. So with that in mind, in this video we'll talk about how you can develop a rational mind through 5 important lessons that can help you think more clearly from the teachings of Marcus Aurelius. Before starting the first lesson, make sure you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on any Stoic wisdom that could change your life. Thank you. First lesson, embrace the virtues. As Marcus Aurelius used to say, dive deep within yourself, for a fountain of goodness is ready to gush forth if you persist in your search. A virtue can be seen as excellence of character, or in simpler terms, morally correct behavior. This behavior not only benefits you and the people around you, but also contributes to society as a whole. Stoicism embraces the idea of an interconnected universe in which everything and everyone shares a link. Consequently, what serves the greater good ends up benefiting you too. Thus, the Stoics firmly believed that those who were most in harmony with reason were those who dedicated themselves to the wider well-being. The Stoics' critical vision helped them to think about their actions for the benefit of society. In other words, they practiced virtues. On the other hand, the absence of virtuous conduct is attributed to ignorance, according to the Stoics. When life pushes you into unforeseen circumstances, virtues can be your guiding stars, directing you onto the right path and keeping you grounded. This is why the people most enriched with virtues generally display calmness and composure. To embody virtuous qualities, you first need to know what the 4 virtues of Stoicism are. They are wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. From the Stoic perspective, wisdom is the ability to distinguish between the good, the bad, the neutral, and everything in between. It implies overcoming the dominance of emotions, allowing reason to govern what is right. When faced with a dilemma, wisdom allows you to analyze the 2 options with a clear mind and impartiality. Courage does not imply the eradication of fear, desire, or anxiety, but rather the conscious decision to continue, overcoming emotional barriers. To be clear, courage is doing something even if you're afraid to do it, like asking your boss for a pay rise, for example. It drives you to act for the greater good, or to carry out tasks despite uncertainty about the outcome. Cowardice, on the other hand, would be not doing what you should even though you feel like it. Next comes justice. Wisdom is the foundation of justice, implying a commitment to what is right and impartial for oneself and others. The Stoics considered it a duty to themselves, to other human beings, and to society as a whole. Justice in the eyes of the Stoics was reflected in John Locke's philosophy later on, where he said in political and social discussions, "I do not agree with a single word you say, but I will defend to the death the right to say it." And finally, temperance, also known as moderation, means maintaining a balanced path between extremes. It involves exercising self-control, restraint, and discipline. Marcus Aurelius highlighted the human characteristic of self-regulation, which differentiates us from animals. Temperance prioritizes long-term well-being over immediate gratification. Consider a common example, a plate of food. Filling your plate with food so that you can't eat anymore might bring you momentary pleasure, but it's bad for your health, starting moments after the gluttony, with difficulty digesting. By exercising temperance, you would have moderation in the amount of food you put on your plate. Wisdom is fundamental in determining the right amount to eat before stopping. Stoicism categorizes things and actions into good, bad, and indifferent. Seeking the good, avoiding evil, and adopting indifference according to personal preference were guiding principles. Moving away from these virtues was tantamount to promoting evil, stealing, disrespect, recklessness, or abstaining from good. Indifferent actions, such as taking a leisurely stroll, did nothing of the sort. These principles offer more than just personal improvement, but collaboration with society. Aligning your actions with these virtues ensures that you always walk the path of righteousness, guided by reason, thus cultivating a mind that thinks calmly and peacefully. Lesson 2. Do less. There's no need to overcomplicate things, right? In order to live more peacefully and clearly, we need to simplify our lives. But it's important to remember that the Stoics valued productivity and considered diligence to be a virtue. On the other hand, they also highlighted moderation as an equally important virtue. So a seemingly contradictory question arises: how can we simplify our lives while still maintaining diligence? Marcus Aurelius observed that we often get involved in activities that are not really necessary. In our modern age, we are inundated with a plethora of entertainment options and distractions throughout the day, which makes it easier than ever to divert our attention from tasks that really matter. When he talks about simplifying, he's also referring to reducing the excess of words. Many of our conversations are superficial, lead nowhere, and waste our time and energy. So, simplifying means focusing on the essential. And simplifying isn't just about eliminating the unnecessary, it's also about working smarter and more efficiently. One of the great advantages of this approach is that, by simplifying our lives, we can do less, but do it better. The constant search for simplicity requires a conscious approach. As Marcus Aurelius advised, if you can eliminate something, you will have more time and peace of mind. Ask yourself the constant question: is this really necessary? In addition, we also need to question unnecessary assumptions in order to eliminate superfluous actions that often accompany them. By doing this, we free up more space in our minds to be able to think clearly and rationally. An effective practice for staying focused on our daily activities is to create a to-do list the night before. This allows us to plan in advance what we need to accomplish when we wake up in the morning, which has a calming effect on the mind. By pre-planning our days, we remove a worry from our minds and can tackle our tasks with greater clarity and determination. What's more, by simplifying our lives, we're not giving up diligence. On the contrary, we are improving our ability to be productive, concentrating on what really matters and eliminating what distracts us. This is what frees us from the multitasking we're used to, and we start to have a worthwhile, deep work. It's a delicate balance between diligence and simplicity that can lead to a more meaningful, less stressful, and clearer life. So always remember, simplifying doesn't mean being lazy. It means being more efficient and deliberate in our actions. Third lesson: practice the dichotomy of control. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this and you will find strength. The dichotomy of control is the distinction between what we can control and what we cannot. For example, the weather, traffic problems, or what people think about you are all out of your control. But how you dress, what time you go out, and the people you have relationships with, that you can control. So whenever you face a situation that makes you feel a certain way, ask yourself, is this within my control? Whatever you can control is a reason to analyze how you can act on it. Whatever you can't control, you must learn to accept and embrace without letting it affect you. Learning to distinguish between these two things and acting accordingly can clear your mind instantly. A very important part of the control dichotomy is amor fati, or translated, love of fate. When you embrace life and all the circumstances it brings you, you will always love life. You can't escape what lies ahead or decide circumstances that are out of your control, such as fate. But you can choose to love your life, no matter what. If you're rejected for a job you've wanted for years, You may think that there's no redemption in such a situation. You wanted the job, you put in a lot of time, you tried, and you weren't hired. You can't pretend to love what fate has offered you in such a situation. But this is actually a misunderstanding. Instead of seeing the fact that you didn't fulfill your wish as something negative, look at it through an impartial lens and ask yourself, why didn't it work out? This will help you see what you can improve and thus have a positive attitude about it. Or the reason you didn't get the job was a failure on your part, in which case, this is also something you can control. You can work to correct these failures and try again when a similar opportunity arises in the future. By doing so, you will have developed more skills and perhaps even be hired at a higher salary than before. But if the reason was an external factor, such as the hiring of a relative of the company's owner, you shouldn't worry about it because it was never under your control, which means that the opportunity was never really real, and there's no point in getting upset about something that isn't real. Part of accepting fate is distancing yourself from a fixed outcome and external markers of success. In this case, it wasn't a loss or failure because victory was impossible due to external factors that were beyond your control. If you want to be a picture painter, for example, and measure your success by the number of canvases in a collection that you make, then you will let your success be controlled by the art market of interest at the time. But if you choose to measure your success by the degree of satisfaction with the pictures you paint, or the amount of study and action you put into the work to paint them, then you are in control of your success. So eliminate everything you don't have influence over from your head, and do everything you can to try to achieve your goals. But never forget that you might not reach them and accept that possibility in advance. Focus on the process and do your job. If we only deal with what is within our control and commit ourselves to accepting everything that doesn't turn out exactly as it does, then we will feel calm and more satisfied, whatever happens. Have you ever thought about this before? If you haven't, comment here. I'm going to calm down about what I can't control. And let's see how many people will benefit from this sacred knowledge and live a calmer life. Lesson 4. Understand how to control your emotions. Marcus Aurelius advises us not to allow your emotions to override what your mind tells you. Stop being hypocritical, self-centered, and easily irritated. Acting on emotions is often described as a stark contrast to acting rationally, and this is not without reason. There is nothing that clouds our judgment more than our own emotions. So if you want to think clearly at all times, one of the most important skills to master is the ability to control your emotions. According to Marcus Aurelius, the emotion of anger, in particular, does us more harm than good. Contrary to what many people seem to think or try, controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. When you feel intense anger as a result of a betrayal, you can't control that anger by denying its existence to yourself or others, or by pretending that you're fine. It will still be there no matter how much you push it down. Instead, controlling emotions such as anger is done, according to the Stoics, by redirecting the emotions. So the next time you feel angry, ask yourself what you can do with that anger. Yelling at the person who hurt you may seem tempting, but will it help you to reduce the hurt or improve your situation? Will it help the person who betrayed you to be better? In short, think about what you're tempted to do and ask yourself if it's useful. Many people use emotions such as anger, fear, or even despair as fuel for something more productive, to release that emotion in another way. This release can be used in the gym, for example. If not, find ways of expressing your emotions that are useful. You may get better results by talking calmly to the person who hurt you, explaining your feelings and trying to see their side. You can also write in a diary, lose yourself in a video game or anything else that can help you get rid of the anger afterwards. Another example is anxiety or fear. You can't just push it down, but you can redirect it. Instead of letting anxiety paralyze you, you can use it to challenge yourself, to carry out the actions that make you feel it and acknowledge its existence. This will not only make you understand better why you are feeling that anxiety, but it will also help you to free yourself from it. Let's say you're too afraid to ask your boss for a raise. Many people see this fear as a reason not to do something and allow themselves to be held back by their anxieties. Other people may be able to go ahead and see their anxiety as something that is getting in the way and needs to be repressed and ignored. But that doesn't have to be the case. Instead, your fear is something that can be expressed in a healthy way and perhaps even end up being useful. If you stop to think rationally, the fear in this case is because it has a beneficial meaning for you, which would be to make more money. Your fear comes from your boss's judgment of your request. It makes you think of everything that could go wrong, which can lead you to consider all the possible questions your boss might ask, all the counter-arguments you might hear. That way, you can prepare for them and form a plan for each possible scenario. But the most important thing is that fear provides a positive motivation to go all the way, to challenge yourself and grow as a person, to prove to yourself that you are capable, to take the step, not in spite of fear, but partly because of it. That fear can sometimes even put up a barrier in your mind to stop you asking for that raise. But remember Marcus Aurelius's phrase, "The obstacle is the way." And in this scenario, you can be aware of anxiety throughout the process and think, how amazing that I'm trying to do this anyway. When you can redirect strong emotions with ease, you'll be a calm person no matter what, and your emotions will never diminish your ability to think rationally and make intelligent decisions. Controlling your emotions is the key to a calmer mind. That's why it's important to know how to deal with anxiety, especially in difficult and stressful times. If you're struggling to deal with anxiety in uncertain or difficult times, I've left a link in the first comment to help you master these emotions as the Stoics did. Take a look. Lesson 5. Strengthen your perception. Marcus Aurelius says, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you won't." One of the greatest lessons of Stoicism is to take control of your perception, that is, how you see things. We are used to judging everything we encounter, any event we experience, anyone we meet. We see everything with a value judgment. Something was bad, good, boring, funny, beautiful, ugly, etc. Without knowing it, this is a very exhausting practice that can affect our lives for the worse. And this is basically our ego speaking in the back of our minds, which puts us on a pedestal and inferiorizes others in our judgments. For example, judging every interaction you have on a particularly difficult day as awful gives the day itself a worse view than it really was. If you think of a party by saying it was boring, it will be just that boring part of your week. This will prevent all the other good experiences you had there from being drowned out by one negative experience. We often let our initial judgments about things be influenced by our emotions, which means that they are probably not entirely rational. In fact, they are hardly rational most of the time. What's more, our tendency to judge every moment of our lives goes hand in hand with the inclination to intensify things that make them seem worse. If you're dumped by your partner, you might say that they broke your heart, instead of stating the fundamental fact that they no longer have the same feelings for you as before. This way of thinking shapes how you feel. It's not the actual event that makes you feel bad, but the way you unconsciously choose to think about it. So what happens is not an event and a reaction to it, but rather an event, your judgment or observation about it, and only then a reaction to it. The Stoics, on the other hand, encourage people to be careful about judging everything they encounter and the things they do. And one of the ways to be careful is to undo your judgments, which essentially means taking a broader view of them, being able to forget your first instinct and judge something through a more optimistic, impartial, and reasonable lens. You can try to use another view of that boring party in your mind, such as an event where you had the opportunity to see a new place and meet new people. If you realize afterwards that you didn't identify with anyone, you don't have to put this down to an expectation of negativity, but rather the opportunity to try something new. Practicing not judging everything based on your first instinct and emotion is the best way to start practicing your perception of life. Whenever you think about something in an opinionated way, try to ask yourself, is this rational? What have I based my opinion on? Is there another, more positive view that I can take of this? Marcus Aurelius emphasized that injuries can only be injuries if you consider them as such. In other words, it means that any difficult experience you've been through seems more difficult and worse than you consider it to be. Your judgment of the event itself intensifies it in a negative way. Marcus Aurelius realized this early on, which he reflected in his phrase, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In this way, you have total control over how certain situations affect you. The Stoics also encourage you to see every bad thing that happens as an opportunity or source for good. As an exercise to train your perspective in a Stoic way, there is a challenge called turning the obstacle upside down. Imagine that you have a beautiful garden, which you are very proud to have and look after. Now imagine that one day it's full of grubs and parasites, which will probably frustrate you. These grubs and parasites in your garden are the obstacle to what you are trying to achieve, which is to make the garden beautiful, strong, and healthy. But in this situation, you can find an opportunity for good. It's an opportunity where you can practice patience, study plants to make your gardening skills better, and understand how to make your plants stronger, and keep grubs and parasites away from your garden. All the skills and care you learn will result in stronger, healthier plants. What's more, should it happen again, you'll already have the knowledge to know how to deal with it. On this subject, Marcus Aurelius famously said, "The impediment to action promotes action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So instead of over-judging everything you encounter, take the time to see things objectively, and you may discover that life is simpler and clearer than you thought. In such cases, stop, take a deep breath and ask yourself, why did this happen? Then think, how can I make sure this doesn't happen again? Every situation has a more positive interpretation and a more negative one. By adjusting your mindset, you'll find that nothing bothers you as much as it used to, and you'll go through life with a much calmer and clearer conscience. Sixth lesson, adopt a broader perspective. Marcus Aurelius, he emphasizes Plato's wisdom. Whenever you want to talk about people, it's best to take a wide view and see everything at once. Adopting a distance view is an extremely vital aspect of gaining mental clarity. In the hustle and bustle of life, we often find ourselves stuck in the middle of every problem. Every challenge seems to be the one that suffocates us and can make us leave without hope. Imagine being part of a small crowd. It can feel like the whole city is suffocating in a traffic jam. However, changing your point of view just a few steps away can reveal a totally different reality. In essence, when we step back and contemplate the great tangle of our world and existence, we realize how tiny our personal experiences are and how infinitesimal we are in the vast scheme of things. This shift in perspective reveals the expansive realm that lies beyond our immediate encounter. People often ignore the truth that their own encounters and points of view are not the only ones worth considering, even in their own lives. This is their ego speaking louder than their conscience. In the same way, when we walk down the street and feel that everyone is looking at us, it's our ego filling us in to give us a sense of importance. Consider someone who has had an unfavorable experience with cats. This person may find it difficult to understand that cats can be beloved companions to other people unless they purposefully acknowledge the possibility of different experiences from time to time. It is essential to take a step back and ask, what am I blind to or failing to understand? This practice of reflection has many benefits. For example, imagine having to choose between staying in your current job or looking for a new position available elsewhere. This decision can seem daunting, especially if you're not sure that one of the options will fulfill your deepest desires. Although your current job offers security and you have that chill in your stomach from the extra responsibilities that come with a promotion, the desire for a better salary appeals to you. You may feel confused or even trapped in this dilemma. But there are plenty of unexplored prospects beneath the surface. Have you thought about venturing into a completely different field of work or exploring a side venture that complements your current job? Or perhaps immersing yourself in a passion to divert your focus from the tasks you find less appealing. It's entirely plausible that a number of unexplored paths in life are escaping your notice. Adopting a broad perspective rather than fixating only on immediate concerns helps significantly in making informed decisions. Broadening your scope is not only valuable for determining priorities, but also for shaping your opinions and forming a comprehensive judgment. It's important to consider all the possibilities in a given situation. In addition, taking a step back means distancing yourself from prejudices and personal points of view, which helps you not to let past and emotional facts take over your vision. Temporarily, letting go of your beliefs and desires can offer a new point of view, leading you to reflect on the people around you and your responsibilities towards them. In the simplicity of a few moments, you may perceive an action like throwing garbage on the ground as something of no value, which has no impact on the world. However, when you pause and broaden your perspective to encompass the whole world and the possible consequences, If everyone follows suit, the insignificance of your inclination to throw garbage becomes totally apparent. From the moment you see yourself as the protagonist of your story, you need to see that there are other protagonists in other stories playing similar roles in some situations. In this case, in contrast to the well-being of the planet as mentioned earlier, the Stoics thought that everything in the world is totally connected and that the general well-being of the world also improves your personal well-being. Therefore, taking a step back and looking at the world as a whole, rather than just at your life, is extremely important when facing a choice, difficulty, problem, or change in life. You can ask yourself some questions. This can be done in the moment or later, perhaps when you're thinking about your day, either during a walk or when writing a diary about it, something Aurelius was particularly fond of. The most common questions to ask yourself are, what could be the long-term effects of my choice about as action? How might someone else's perspective on this be different from mine? Do I know someone in a similar situation or with similar goals to mine who could help? Does my choice or action affect my well-being? Does it affect the well-being of the people around me? Are there any choices I haven't considered yet? Taking the time to consider all aspects of the world helps you to understand your actions, thoughts, life, and choices more clearly. It helps you to see the world as a whole, and thus helps you. When you consider the whole picture, you'll always have a broad perspective that leaves you free of restrictions, prejudices, or unnecessary doubts. To maintain this mental clarity and live in total harmony with the world, you just need to remain calm in the face of situations. Click on the video on the screen to see how to stay calm with these lessons from the Stoics.